Bun găsit, dragii mei! Am onoarea să fiu alături de Jojo Moyes și o să vă povestesc în câteva cuvinte ce personalitate avem alături de noi. E o femeie puternică, o scriitoare de succes, iubită în întreaga lume datorită cărților ei, în primul rând. Este unul dintre puținii autori care au câștigat de 2 ori premiul Romanul romantic al anului, acordat de Asociația Scriitorilor de Romane de Dragoste. Dragostea este motorul lumii, nu-i așa? Cărțile ei au fost traduse în 46 de limbi. Au ajuns pe locul întâi în topurile din 12 țări și s-au vândut în peste 38 de milioane de exemplare în întreaga lume. Toate cărțile sale în România au fost traduse la Editura Litera. Îi datorez editurii această întâlnire extraordinară și succesul a fost unul fulminant. Ca să aveți o idee, peste 420.000 de exemplare vândute într-o țară ca a noastră, unde tirajul mediu al unei cărți este de 2000 de exemplare. Așa că, dragi cititori, ne aflăm astăzi în fața unui adevărat eveniment editorial. Mă bucur să particip la această întâlnire cu Jojo Moyes, o scriitoare pe care o iubesc și pe care o respect. E o întâlnire în care aș vrea, printre altele, să aflu care este povestea celei care scrie povești. Și nu cu mult timp în urmă am și văzut în cinema un film care mi-a rămas în suflet, Înainte să te cunosc, dacă ați fost la cinema și l-ați văzut, Me Before You, mi-a cucerit sufletul și avem ce povesti astăzi. Așa că să începem. Hello, Jojo, welcome to Romania.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You had a difficult start in your writing career, with the first 3 manuscripts being rejected. What motivated you to pursue this career, despite all this?
No. Sometimes I look back and I can't believe that I kept going. I think I just have a drive to write. I can't not write. If I don't write for a long time, I get very... I don't know if you have the same saying in Romania, but I get very antsy. I get a bit fidgety. I need to process the world through words. And so I think even if I hadn't managed to sell my books to a publisher, once the internet happened, I think I would have probably just put stories out there.
Today in Romanian public television, I have a show, which is my production, called something like, I'm trying to translate, is Nu există, nu se poate in Romania, which means there is no such thing as I cannot do it. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's why I think when you have a no in front of you, you really should pursue. Because
definitely. I am definitely that person. My parents didn't have a lot when we grew up, but they gave in me the belief that I could do anything if I worked hard enough. And I think sometimes I still do that. I've relaid a floor in my house once because it needed doing and the carpenter told me he couldn't do it. And I thought, well, I need it done for Christmas. And my husband walked in and there I was up to my waist in the floor with a hammer. Because I think we can do most things. You just have to read and learn and try your best. So I agree with your show.
Thank you very much. What were the main literary influences in your youth?
In my youth, oh my goodness. I was an only child till I was 18. So I did a lot of reading, and it's very hard to pinpoint one literary influence because I read everything. I read children's books, I read adults' books, I read the Bible from start to finish. I just was, we have a saying in England, a bookworm. Do you have this saying? Just I always had my head in a book, and so
under the pillow, yeah.
Maybe. I think one of the things my parents did, they let me buy comic books when I was young. And with my own children, I always believe that I don't mind what they read as long as they're reading. And I think those comic books actually fired my imagination and gave me an idea about plot and character and how to keep somebody reading. So I think all reading is useful. I don't have a kind of a preference.
We really need inspiration in our life. Has your literary taste changed in time?
Yes. When I was a child, I loved horror books, ghost books, horror books. The darker, the better. I think once you become a parent, it becomes really hard to read that stuff. I don't like books that are going to depress me. And that might sound ironic, given that I wrote the book that seems to have made half the world cry. But I think Me Before You is ultimately quite an uplifting book. I don't like things that just end bleakly. I feel like we have lived through a tough time the last few years. And what I want from my books is something that's going to make me laugh or inspire me or make me feel challenged, but not depressed.
I'm a mother, so
yeah.
I have a 13 years old girl, and I think she will become a writer. She really, really writes very, very well in English.
Yeah.
Her school is mainly in English, and the crime is her favorite subject now. So I'm terrified.
Well, at least it's better than becoming a criminal.
Yeah, but now that you told me this, I'm better,
I think we all go through phases, don't we?
Exactly.
I mean, I used to like crime a lot more, but now in about 10 years' time, I'll just be reading about fluffy cats and, flowers or something.
Okay, how would you describe your experience with quick reads? But please keep in mind this question, because I will explain a little bit in Romanian for our people what means quick reads. E vorba de o serie de cărți scurte, ale căror autori sunt și celebrități, cu cel mult 128 de pagini. Sunt cărțile de acest tip, concepute pentru a încuraja adulții care nu citesc des, nu au timp, viața e nebună, cum o știm, este greu să citească și să redescopere bucuria cărților la o vârstă la care poverile apasă pe umerii lor. Așa că această serie Quick Reads a fost lansată în Marea Britanie și în Irlanda de către primul ministru de atunci, Tony Blair, la Ziua Mondială a Cărții în 2006 și până la mijlocul anului 2020 au fost publicate peste 100 de titluri și au fost vândute peste 4,8 milioane de exemplare și împrumutate peste 5 milioane de exemplare din biblioteci, ceea ce a fost o reușită. Deci ideea a mers exact acolo unde a țintit. So, how would you describe your experience with quick reads?
So a few years ago, I was asked to write a quick reads book, and as I think you've just described to your viewers, they are a very short book by well-known authors, just written with a slightly faster pace and maybe fewer challenging words. And at first I thought, oh, this is going to be quite hard. And then I found I really enjoyed it.
Why did you say it will be hard?
My books are usually 130,000 words, and this wanted it to be 17 to 20,000. And that's a lot of story to pack into one thing. But actually, I really enjoyed doing it. It's actually a really nice length. It's like a novella. And I liked having to write in a very direct way. You just have to get the plot, and make it happen, and not slow it up with too many descriptions and too much flowery language. Anyway, it went down very well. It was a little book called Paris for One, about a girl who goes to Paris for the first time. And then I got lots of emails and letters from readers. Some English was not their first language, and they were saying that they really felt confident reading this book, or for some people, they just didn't feel that they were book readers, and then they'd picked up a little quick reads, because I think they're £1 where they're for sale, £1, which is not a lot of money. It's less than a cup of coffee. And they really enjoyed it.
Low budget, easy to read. Yeah. A lot of advantages for the people in this crazy life we have.
Exactly. And you can buy them from all sorts of places, not just a bookshop. And so it was such a positive response. And there were so many people who, prisoners, people who were stuck in prison, people who were in hospital, people who wanted to get out of the habit of going through their phone and instead perhaps have a little break with a book. And I thought, gosh, these are really valuable. They're really good at giving you a mental health break. They're really good at teaching people English. They're really good at just encouraging people back to read, because if you don't read, you don't have the first building block on which to progress. If you want to progress in life, you have to be able to read, unless you're completely extraordinary and have some amazing other kind of talent. And then a couple of years ago, I saw a news report that Quick Reads had lost all its funding. It was a charity that required funding from government organisations. And I thought, well, maybe a lot of us writers could contribute and keep it going. And when I rang them, they said, no, we need this much money, and we need it for 3 years in a row to try and secure new funding. And somehow I found myself agreeing to fund it. So I have paid for Quick Reads for the third year is just coming up. And it's been really rewarding. I mean, it's been a very tough time, but I do think that books have helped carry people through the pandemic. And I'm hoping that Quick Reads will encourage even more people, because these are good names. These are, big name authors, very, very good storytellers. So it's not just for people who struggle with reading. It's just for people who like a good story.
Is this a model you would support to promote literacy in other countries too?
I think it's a great idea. It's a very simple way of doing it. All you need is for the publishers to agree to publish the little books, and for the authors to agree to write them. I mean, there is a very small fee, but it's really a charitable thing. But most writers I know, I've had talks with them, and I say it's in your interest to keep reading going, because these are the people who may end up buying our books. But I think every country thrives on how literate its population is. And the better educated and the better read our population is, the better the country's going to be.
I would really love to enter somehow, I don't know how, inside the mind, the brain of the writer. Where do you find inspiration for your books?
Often the news. Me Before You came from a news story I heard in England. The Giver of Stars, which is my latest book, I saw an article in a magazine about a historic organization of horseback librarians, and it was just such an amazing bunch of pictures. I immediately saw it as a book. Most of my books are inspired by something I see or hear in real life. I think most of us go through life not really paying attention. And if you really stop and look at, why are the curtains drawn in that house every day? Why is that person always sitting in that car? Why is all the furniture on that lawn? There's always a story. And I think once you start switching on your brain and looking for stories everywhere, they come to you.
So The Giver of Stars, the story starts from historical facts, as you said. How important is this documentation for the backbone of a book? How long do you work on this documentation? Because it's like, it's so simple. I read some news and I write a book. No.
For Giver of Stars, it was so important because it was set in America, in Kentucky, and obviously I live in England. It was set in the 1930s. It had a backdrop of a coal mining industry, of the wilds of Kentucky. There was a whole lot of things I knew nothing about. And because I'm an ex-journalist, I have to be accurate. I hate the idea that I would have got facts wrong. So I went to Kentucky. I ended up going 4 times, or was it 3 or 4 times? And I lived in a tiny cabin in a mountain by myself so that I could replicate the experience of these women. So I walked in the mountains, I rode a horse in the mountains, I looked at snakes on the ground and, what kind of birds. And I went out there in all different seasons so that I could see how cold it was in winter, how hot it was. But most importantly for that book, it was about hearing the way the rural American people spoke, because it was a very particular way of speaking, very ornate, actually descended from medieval England. And so I knew to write about Kentucky, I had to write in the voice of the Kentucky people. And it's beautiful, it's poetic, and it's funny, and they're great storytellers. So once I went out there, I felt like I had the voice of the book, and that made writing the book was a joy. I loved it.
So you have to put yourself in the shoes of those people. You really have to feel it, to taste it, to feel history.
To taste it, to smell it, to be in it. In my experience, some writers can just imagine things and they go to Google or, a search engine. I have to be in it. I have to feel it. And I think when you do that, you also find out so much more, and it always changes your story. Like, I ended up in a deserted house in the middle of the woods, and I ended up, talking to people about experiences with bears or with, mountain lions, and all this stuff ends up in the book. And I just don't believe you can get that from a computer screen. And it was also a great life experience. It was one of the happiest times of my life.
Do you document facts, history, and characters alike? Which is more difficult and which is more rewarding at the same time?
Character is the absolute key for me. I think before I start, I try to outline who is this person, where did they go to school, what did their parents do, what kind of house did they grow up in. I have all these things that I put them through. What would be in their refrigerator, what would be in their handbag? If they saw somebody kicking a dog, how would they react? And once you can answer all these questions about somebody, one of your characters, it won't necessarily end up in the book, but what it will do is it will change the way they react to other characters. And I have learned over the years, and I think I've written something like 14 books, if you don't know your characters well enough before you start, the book never works. It's just like a really bad blind date. People they meet and it's like whereas if you have one character who you've already worked out, hates spiders, and you've got another character who turns up and they've got a spider on their head, immediately you've got a situation. It's more interesting. Sorry, that was a slightly strange example, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
So do you draw your characters very clearly from the beginning?
Yeah.
You don't let them have a life of their own?
Sometimes they take on a life of their own.
They can surprise you.
They can surprise you. And that's the fun bit of writing. But for me, I have to have a skeleton to hang the character on. Sometimes they just do something completely out of character, but I think it really helps if you have a clear idea of who they are. But that is also the hardest thing to do. Some characters drop into your lap fully formed, and it's very easy. Before now, I have deleted 70,000 words of a book because I realized the character wasn't working.
Yeah, you wrote the screenplay for the movie adaptation of Me Before You. I told to our viewers about this already. What was the main challenge in adapting your own work? Would you do it again?
Oh, I have done it again. It's basically my second job now. I think the biggest challenge.
But what is adaptation? Let's explain.
With you. I'm going to be very honest. It's not just the writing, because you have to lose a lot of your book to squeeze it into 120 minutes of script. It's the politics of Hollywood that you have to learn. It is a very complicated, challenging environment, and they speak a different language, not like a foreign language, but if someone means no, they'll often say yes. Or if, we love your script, they hate your script. It's like you have to start understanding the nuances of what they want and how to deal with it. I'm quite a straightforward person. So when I was in journalism, I would give somebody a piece that I'd written and they go, "This is terrible, take it back and rewrite it." So I go, okay. In Hollywood, they would never say that. They would say, "Oh, we love this script. We love this script. We were just wondering if we could maybe change this or change that. And, maybe we could get somebody else to have a look at it." it's a different way of speaking, but the end result is the same. So you have to learn not to be upset by it. And also, I had to learn that in Hollywood movies, at least, the writer is the lowest person on the ladder. So I might write a script of my own book, but ultimately it is the director's vision, it is the studio's vision, it is the producer's vision, and I can offer suggestions, but to some extent, you have to accept that at that point it's somebody else's baby.
There are two different jobs, in fact.
Yeah.
To write a book and to make this adaptation, isn't it?
Yes.
And sometimes they try to make you change a little bit the story.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I said with the MGM when I agreed to sell them Me Before You was I didn't want the ending to be changed. And luckily for me, they agreed that it needed to be the same ending. And we never had an argument about that. What you find is that you will end up arguing over small scenes that you think are essential and they might think are not essential, or they might want to put something in. And as the writer, you might know that that's not going to work. So it's about being able to argue your case, but without anger, without, drama. I think I've learned the language now, and I find it quite easy to work with these people. But I think having been a journalist first makes a difference, because when you're a journalist, you're used to working collaboratively. You're used to just doing what needs to be done.
And to trust the process.
Exactly.
And the people.
Trust the process. Yeah, everybody wants to make a good thing. And if you're lucky, you'll be surrounded by talented people, and it might be better than the original thing.
Me Before You was a turning point for your career, isn't it? You said on various occasions that you are a bit discouraged that the 7 novels you wrote before this hit were not doing very well at their time. Why do you think the public revisited them afterwards?
I guess, well, I know when I when I buy a book by somebody I don't know, and if I love that book, I will go back and look to see what other books they've written. And so I think I've been very lucky, because Me Before You had such a huge impact. A lot of people then went, oh, what else has she done? And so it's been really a pleasure for me to see so many books that I wrote a long time ago now, out there in the world being read.
And one of these previously underrated novels was The Last Letter from Your Lover. But now the movie adaptation is hitting Netflix on July 23rd. That's right. Are you involved in this production in any capacity also?
Yes. Well, we've been trying to get this film made for 9 years. 10 years actually. So I've been involved from the start. I didn't write the script for this one, but I did what they call notes. So every change that got made, I made suggestions and changes. And I was on set for the film. I very much liked the director, a woman called Augustine Frizzell. And so for me, being on set and watching your world come to life in the hands of really good actors is about as exciting as life gets. So it was just a pleasure for me watching this happen. And I think Augustine is a very talented director, and she's very romantic, but she's also, as a director, she's very feminine and inclusive. So there's no tantrums. Everyone's just calmly doing their best. And I like that energy. She just brings a lovely energy, but she has a very beautiful visual eye. So the film is sumptuous. The music is gorgeous and the outfits are gorgeous. And as a writer, it's really an amazing thing to see something more beautiful than what was in your imagination come to life. So it's been a lovely experience.
You said, I was waiting almost 10 years to see this coming.
Yeah.
10 years, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
How do you explain this to the young writers, let's say?
Oh, my goodness. Well, as you know, I wrote 3 books that didn't get published. And then I wrote another 10 years before I got a bestseller. So I would say to any writer, if you write, you have to write because you love writing. You can't write because you're expecting a success or money, or you can't. You can only write from your heart, and that may sound a bit corny, but every writer I know has ups and downs, and the thing that keeps me going is I love to do it. I love the process. I love the journey. And if I can earn a living while I'm doing that, then that's fine. And also, I think if I'd had success much earlier in my life, I probably wouldn't have handled it very well. I would have probably not worked as hard, or I had to learn how to do this well.
You need maturity to be an adult.
And you need to be in many different situations, and you need to have lived some life, and you need to have, fallen in love a few times, experienced death among people that you love, had some jobs, been to a few places. All these things, you meet very different kinds of people, and all this experience will seep into your writing. And so I think we're in a world where we expect everything to happen like that. And I don't think writers can do that. I think if you are lucky enough to get a book published, which is hard enough in itself, you just have to say, this is number one of a lifetime of writing if I'm lucky. So my focus is always, what's the next one and how can I make it better?
Which of your other novels you can say are good candidates for adaptations, and why?
Oh my goodness. Well, Giver of Stars has been optioned by Universal Studios, and even as I was writing that, I saw it as a film. It's such a visual subject, those tiny women on their horses in the middle of this big landscape. It just looked amazing to me. So that's going to be made. I know that there's a new director working on a script at the moment. I have a funny little book, which I believe might have done okay in Romania, called The 1+1. I don't know if it has the same title there. I wrote a script for that, but there's been a lot of things going on, so it hasn't made it yet. But it's a bit like Little Miss Sunshine. It's a little road trip movie, and I reread the script recently because somebody wanted to see it, and I just thought it's funny and it's sweet and it breaks your heart a little bit. And I thought that even though it's not a huge movie, it would be a sweet thing for people to watch. I think it would make people happy. And I kind of hope that one ends up on a screen one day.
Mm-hmm. Let's go a little bit behind the scene. Mm-hmm. Many people doesn't know what means to be a writer seen by the people from Hollywood. Okay, how do you arrive at this turning point in your life? I mean, do you send your script somewhere? Do you have an agent? Mm-hmm. It's somebody working behind you?
Yeah, there's an agent.
See, this happened. Yeah?
I'm part of a big agency, and After Me Before You was published in America. The New York Times ran a big piece about it, and then obviously all the Hollywood studios read the books pages to see if there are any stories they can buy. So we had calls from various studios, and then MGM flew me out to Hollywood from a meeting I was in America. And that was amazing, to go to, I'd never been to Los Angeles before. This was about 2012. And just to be picked up in a big black car, with a copy of the Hollywood Reporter in the back. I remember kind of calling my husband going, oh my gosh, you never guess where I am. And then you go up in a lift and there's a reception with all the Oscars, and then there's, these Hollywood guys kind of sitting there. It was just like a fairy tale.
What about your family? Do they know you are a celebrity?
Do you know, they didn't.
Do they feel?
We live in the countryside, and we live in the same area that we've lived for 20 years. So when people around here know me, they know me because my kids were at the local school, or because I have dogs, or because I have horses. So it's very not showbiz here. And it was only when...
an unusual celebrity. You don't live in a castle, yeah?
No, I don't live in a castle. I have a nice house, but I've lived in the same area for 20 years. I just bought the bigger house. So, yeah, I think people are quite protective here as well. They look out for each other. But my children didn't think that my job was anything other than mum sits in the back room with her feet on the dog, swearing at a typewriter kind of thing. They just, I was not glamorous. I was just, grumpy mummy in her pajamas. And then we had the premiere of Me Before You, and I took the kids to that. And suddenly, like, they met Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, or they met, Neville Longbottom from Harry Potter. And then they were like, oh, okay, you do have a big job. But no, I'm just mum. I'm not really anybody exciting to them.
So the final question, and thank you so much for being with me this half an hour. Please tell me about the future. How do you see the future of yourself, but also the future of humanity? Where do you think are those great ingredients in life we should embrace to simply live with dignity and better and with love?
Well, I think we have all gone through a profound change in this last year. And I think many of us have had to rethink our lives. Many of us have lost loved ones. I know I have. And for me, it has made me slow down. When I don't know if you had lockdown in the same way in Romania, but we didn't leave our houses for ages. And I was lucky because I have a big garden and I have my dogs. And so every day I had a reason to get up and go out. And I learned to just slow down, enjoy watching my dog roll in the grass, not be on a plane every 5 minutes. I wouldn't wish the anxiety back, but I think I learned that I have to change the way I live and not live to work, but work to live. I hope that what we can move forwards to is just, the thing that worries me is the entrenching of attitudes, left and right, that there seems to be a hardening of attitudes. I think being online doesn't help that because people just dig deep into their argument. I think if we can get out and about, talk to our neighbors, reestablish some kindness, reestablish some friendships, I just think we could, I don't know, I feel like I sound like an idealist, but it would be nice if we could just be kind, look around us, because I think everybody feels better in the end.
Thank you so much.
Be
healthy, be creative, and we love you.
Thank you so
also
much,
here
Andreea.
in Romania.
Bye-bye, Romania.
Thank you so much.
De ziua noastră, tu primești cadoul. La Zilele Aniversare Litera ai peste 2500 de titluri cu reduceri de până la 90%, cadou garantat la orice comandă și evenimente de neratat. De 32 de ani aducem cartea în casele românilor. Hai pe litera.ro să-ți alegi ce citești.